you used to be able to do things with much more freedom in medicine without, all the litigation and the patient. You would act, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like third
Yeah.
world medicine sometimes, and you're a
Yeah.
little bit more free to put yourself, fortunately, sometimes the patient risk for the greater good, if that makes sense, where you could take some chances. And that's how these in the past, like the C-sections, the defibrillators, how these things came about is because there wasn't so much restriction in medicine for physician to actually have the courage to step out and try these things. And so that's what's fascinating about those stories, which I think we find really appealing, is that someone's dying and you literally could just do everything that you could in the moment to try to save them, and something great came out of it and was invented. I mean, so that's what I like about those kind of stories that people like to hear, where there's courage and people are stepping out in faith and doing what they can.
Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. Be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get notified when the next video comes out. It only takes 2 seconds to make 2 clicks. So let's do it. Let's get back to the video. Hello, 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 Fearless Freedom Tribe. It is Dr. G, and we are back for another exciting episode of the Fearless Freedom with Dr. G podcast. Today, we actually have 2 guests on the show, and they are Tim and May Hindmarsh, and they're going to tell you all about what they're up to and who they are. Take it away.
Outstanding. Well, we're a physician couple. We've been married for 30 years. We got married 3 days after we graduated, I think. And then we went off on a honeymoon, which was really fun. We went to the Caribbean for 3 weeks, and then residency. And then shortly after that, we finished residency, and then we moved to rural Oregon and have been rural family doctors and urgent care doctors for the last 28 years. And then we started podcasting about 2 years ago.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, that was a really good summary. You did it much faster than I do.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, she'd have the names of the cast.
I'm not like very succinct either. So it's like, my explanations usually go on and on and on. So totally get it. That's awesome. So, there's a lot there. I mean, you have a lot we have to kind of go into and unpack a little bit. So tell us about how, was there any fear involved in finishing medical school and starting a life together?
I'm
Maybe
just laughing and
even starting residency. I mean, I don't know. Could there be fear in any of these things? I don't know. So I'm curious, and the audience is curious.
I was just kind of giggling about that. For me, I struggled a lot with the getting through med school. Fear, I wouldn't say I don't know if it was fear as much as frustration and obstacles that I had to overcome. I had a lot going on. I had a lot of unresolved issues with an eating disorder, depression, and I was undiagnosed. Then I had a sports injury with the unhappy triad, ACL, the whole bit, which rendered me to drop out of med school and then think about what I was doing. And so long story short, then I got back in and was in Tim's class. That's how we met. And even through that, I was still fighting a lot of demons and trying to get a hold of my anorexia and bulimia. And I was at the point, even when with internship and a new marriage and all that, struggling, really wanting to just pack it in because I wasn't sure that I really liked it. And I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I felt in my heart I was doing it for family pressures. I mean, you know the story, we hear it a lot of times. But so fear for me, it was at that point, fear kind of helped me finish in a way, because I thought, here I am now. Got into university at 17, and now I'm 25 and I don't know anything else. And I put in all this time and money and life And at you're 25, you think you're old at that point.
I
It's
know.
like, right, your life's over. I can't do anything else. And I didn't know anything else. And so I was afraid. I thought, if I just go work at Macy's at the perfume department or whatever, what is that all I'm going to be able to do with my life, because I'm kind of done with medicine. So it was fear of not knowing what else I could do that really actually kept me in there. It sounds, I mean, it was not the right kind of way to use fear, but it did work that way. And we finished residency. And even when I started practice, it was like the same thing. I don't know what else I could do, because this is all I've ever known. I went through high school years, you know, trying to get into like good grades so I could get into medicine, which then I did all that. So that's all I've ever known since I was 16, 17. So I'm just driving myself for the last 10 years. I'm afraid to try anything else. And I use that to keep going in some ways and to just push myself and give it a try. So it turned into a positive thing in that way. You mentioned it. So at the same time, gosh, we got married. We had a lot of obstacles as newlyweds doing internship and residency. My sister moved in with us after 6 months. I think Tim had a lot of fear of what the hell.
Oh,
was I
gee.
thinking?
That had to be quite a challenge, right?
Yeah, fear of multiple homicide.
Well, you have like estrogen overload in your
Yeah.
head.
Exactly.
That's what it was. Exactly.
Yeah, toxic levels.
But man, throughout our career, we faced lots of different fears. I mean, the simple fears from when we did rural medicine, we were the coroner to the ICU, CCU, on call. Tim did full OB practice. Sometimes, it's like you're fresh out of school and you're crapping your pants because you don't have really good access to support, and that fear of the unknown and the firsts, and fear of the sort of failure. But I think as life has gone along, and now that have done this, 28, 30 years, and we're
Yeah.
empty nesters now, we're looking, we're getting through this burnout phase. It has hit us, as well as not fitting into the corporate model and transitioning into trying different things. And now we're older, and for myself, I think I fear being able to do anything else, because this is all I've done. And I know I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I have hobbies, but the whole thing of putting myself out there as a late 50, almost 60 something, and trying something else, or even in the med space, is frightening. So I'm kind of right there working through that this last year. What about you, hun?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you fear different things as you go through life. And to dovetail into what May said, I think it's really important to understand that you need to use it. It reminds me, I've done a lot of action sports, so I'm really pretty familiar with fear. I mean, in about a 3-year period, I'd witnessed 2 recreational fatalities. So we'd ride dirt bikes out on the sand dunes. I saw a guy get killed there.
Okay. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what sports are we talking about?
Yeah.
Oh,
gee.
skydiving.
I have 600 skydives, and so I mean,
Okay, so
I was
skydiving,
on
got
I
it.
was on a jump with somebody that actually did a swoop, which is a very fast turn to the ground to swoop across the ground, and he missed that one by about 25 feet and
Oh my
essentially
gosh.
exploded. So
That is
familiar with a
horrible.
lot of the using fear to as a motivator. And it's interesting because probably the greatest base jumper in the world, his quote is, people ask him, are you you must be fearless, you do this. He goes, no, I use the fear to fuel myself.
Nice.
So the fear is what keeps him sharp. The fear is what makes him pack his parachute in a certain way. The fear is what makes him research where he's going to jump. Like that's the key. And I think that that's really important, because most people feel fear. They feel it as a noxious emotion, and they want to flee from it, just like if you put something really sour or bitter in your mouth. When
Yes.
the reality is, fear can be incredibly powerful if you understand what you're fearing, because there's certain things we should fear. If you're in the woods,
Yeah. And there's a bear coming. Hello.
and there's a bear
Like, yeah,
coming,
fear that.
right?
Fear that.
And I think the toxic side of fear is when you look at a lot of, whether it's the political stuff, and both sides do this. It's, use fear to try to, garner your support, to manipulate people, to get people to buy things. I mean,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
because it's very, very powerful. But in the same way, I think harnessed, they can be incredibly powerful in a positive way as well.
Yeah. No, that's
So,
great. I love how you put that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then May, you said it too. Like you expressed that. Like you said, you feared doing something other than what you knew. And so that drove you. And it turned out to be something extremely positive because as a result, you ended up with a wonderful career. I'm sure you've had some incredible experiences in your practice because you mentioned all of the firsts, right? Because when you are the only doctor and you don't have the specialist to call on, you are doing a lot more than you would normally have done, in a practice in a place that was like, specialty rich. And so there are some experiences that come from that are gonna create some incredible growth in you personally, and also benefits your patients because you saved that person's life, or you did a thing that's going to make a difference in their life, because had you not been there, they probably would not be here either. So there's a great impact that came from you being propelled by fear of, well, I don't know anything else. And it has turned into something absolutely incredible. You're able to leave. I mean, you've seen thousands of patients, I'm sure, over the years. And so so that's a lot of people's lives that have been impacted, because you made a decision to do it anyway, even though you were afraid.
Right. And I would say the more you face those times of being afraid, you kind of get used to it. I guess for me, it's a frequent thing. And as we're talking about it, really, a lot of it goes hand in hand with confidence. For me, it does. But I think for a lot of people, because that fear is tied up with the either lack of confidence, not just I'm afraid because that's a dangerous thing, but it's the unknown, having confidence in yourself, and how much is not a lack of confidence then spurs the fear, right? And personally, I can speak for myself, but that's been a lot for me. That's my struggle bus that I can't seem to, the bus is getting smaller, and I ride on it less often, but that's the thing. But the more you come up against it, and it happened to me numerous times, I was afraid to even get pregnant because I'm like, we're two doctors, but what do we know about raising a kid? This is going to be tough. Yeah. So it's the unknown, and I'm a control person. So a lot of us in medicine are type A control freaks, one on the Enneagram, however you want to put it. So that is the other part too, right? It's the unknown, the lack of control that lights the fear fire. And so the more you do it, and the more you go, oh, I'm really afraid, but I'm going to do this anyway. And then you come out the other side, and it's like, whoa, that was so great. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was a little bad, but then it got better, and I just kicked butt. It gets easier. And then in the future, when you face those fearful moments, you go, yeah, this sucks, and I'm scared, but it's okay because I know I can do it. So it gets better. And it's the things that we've faced in career, but outside of career with our sports, and we've done some crazy stuff that I don't like to. I don't like to get scared. I don't get off
play
on
around
that.
when you do your sports. Clearly,
some people live off of that. I don't. But the more I face those challenges, and I'm afraid, and I'm like, okay, I've done this before. You want to be cautious and think it through and not do anything reckless. But I know it'll be okay. Yeah. People do those ropes courses. It's just for that reason, right? Because there's the trust and the fear and all that. And that's a simple example of it. Yeah.
I love the analogy of the bus gets smaller and I get on it less often. That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, either that or the anchor I'm dragging gets lighter and lighter.
You're shedding it.
the caboose on my backside.
That's awesome. That is awesome. What were you going to say, Tim? I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm always going to say something. But May will tell you that, but I'm being very good. And when we get into this stuff, I don't usually interrupt because she has conquered a lot of things that I think a lot of people would not, would find very inspirational. I mean, my stuff has been more kind of in your face with the action sports and sitting on zillion committees and leadership stuff. And, all those have some different degrees of fear, but they don't really have the emotional cost that May has, kind of gone through, which I think is incredible.
Oh, that's sweet.
Aw.
That's a new.
I
Well,
can
it's
tell
true.
you guys have been married for a little bit.
Yeah, 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? No, that's awesome.
It's always fun. The more shows that we do, and we have our own podcast too, but the more we're talking, little tidbits of, beautiful diamonds of fun nuggets pop out all the time. So
Oh yeah.
even after 30 years, you still get surprised with
That's good.
things from
That's
each other.
good.
Yeah.
That's encouraging because we're at 17 years, so that's good to know.
Ah! Hey, it's like man, there's some rough patches in there, I think, for anybody.
Oh yeah.
And
That's life
but
though.
like anything else, exactly. It's life, and the hard stuff makes you stronger,
That's right.
and it gets better. So it's almost always there's exceptions, of course.
There's always exceptions,
but
but
it's usually worth
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Sticking it out. Yes.
Oh, cool. It's good to know. So tell us about how, so you told us about the fear surrounding the transitions, right? You had major transitions from med school to marriage to residency. Now I am curious, how is it that you went from doctoring and action sport participating to podcasting? How did that happen?
Well, it happened to us in a similar way that happened to a lot of people. When COVID started in when was that? March, I guess, of 2020. I mean,
Yeah.
the day that's solidified in my head was March 12th, 2020. I was supposed to go. I was working that night, and then everything was starting to get weird. And you're hearing this stuff on the news, and the governor shut the state down literally 2 hours before I was supposed to go see Tool.
Oh
which is a big-
no.
yeah. Yeah. Which was
so that was traumatizing in itself.
it was incredibly traumatizing. So, and if anyone if I go to a lot of shows, huge metal fan. If
Yeah.
anybody gets Tool, like Tool fans are not casual. It's not like Elton John where, oh yeah, I like Elton John. He has those fun songs. Like Tool fans are very committed, like to a point where it gets a little bit weird. So we all gathered at my buddy's place, and we listened to music, and we played music, and it was actually really fun. And it was interesting because at that stage of the game, they're like, this is stupid. And I said, we have no idea.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
And when you have no idea, you're going to have to pump the brakes and figure out what it is before we, so
you're talking about missing Tool, and all I could think, which is what I thought you were going to say, was April 1st, we were supposed to be on the plane heading for our annual little tropical vacation to Hawaii. And that, of course, got shut down and closed. And I was ticked because of that, not Tool.
No,
obviously.
Tool was much more significant.
So we were at home, furloughed, so to speak,
Right.
because we were going to go on vacation for 2 weeks, and the pandemic's now happening, and it's April,
Right.
and we were stuck at home watching the news like everybody else, glued to the TV,
Yeah.
glued to the
Well-
internet, and we started researching, and people started asking us questions.
Okay.
So
got it.
they started asking questions. We started doing Facebook live streams.
Okay.
And the first Facebook live stream we did, I think we got up to 200 people live, and we had
that's awesome. That's really good.
We had 10,000
downloads.
downloads.
Oh
in
my goodness.
12 hours. And we go, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
So we kept doing them every week, and with the vision of eventually actually going into the podcast world and doing recordings and whatnot.
We talked about it earlier that year for a little bit about doing it, and it was just
Yeah.
throwing ideas back and forth, and then COVID happened, and we were answering questions, and then, long story short, our financial advisor at the time, who was a podcaster, who I believe you know as well, was encouraging us and putting together a network. It was the Doctor Podcast Network at the time,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's like, "You guys should do this. If you can do live streams, and doing the recordings is easy because you can edit everything."
That's right.
So basically, by January of 21, we launched the podcast, and we've just
Awesome.
passed 101 episodes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you're bi-weekly then, or how many times a week?
No, once a week.
once a week.
Once a week.
Once a
Okay.
week.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. No, that is, I mean, I would never have thought about this particular media as a platform. But I kind of fell into it as well. So, but it's definitely a great place to meet people that would not normally have crossed your path, even with your sports or with, with medicine. It's incredible. Like you just meet people from all walks of life, all over the world. And, you can just have a casual conversation as if you knew each other, which I think is absolutely incredible about this particular media platform. So yeah,
Absolutely. That's
I
the
hope you
one thing
guys are enjoying it. I mean,
we
so
love
far.
it. And that's the one thing we've learned. We're just at first, who are we, two dopey little country docs trying to do this thing and asking, guests and reaching out to people. We really learned that not to be afraid of no or no answers, because nothing bad's going to happen.
Right.
But what the yeses are so powerful. And now we're just not afraid to ask anybody. And so we've had some amazing guests and people that, you're right, would never have met otherwise, have great connections, great stories to share and tell, and it's super fun for us as well. So yeah, it's a really fun thing to do for sure. So if anybody, I always am encouraging to anyone that thinks about doing a podcast, whatever their passion is and their story that they want to tell, it's great fun. It's a great hobby. And we're hoping this is where we're at. The next thing of kind of talking about fear is
Yeah.
we have some thoughts and ideas about how to take our podcast a little and grow it and to the next level,
Nice.
which is going to require time and some financial commitment and some life changes,
Okay.
in the moving from what's comfortable. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. And yeah,
Okay.
the next
That's
little
awesome.
fear struggle, but
Yeah. And so you got to tell everybody what the name of the podcast is so they can have a listen.
It is BSFreeMD. The name came from basically, I had done a tremendous amount of work with the insurance company side of one of the groups we worked with. They owned 2 or 3 different lines of insurance. So I had seen all of the regulatory stuff, all of the big pharma, like all of that kind of from the inside. And I always felt my role in those businesses was to say what everybody was thinking, but didn't have the guts to say.
Oh, nice.
that's his special gift,
But
and
to do it,
God-given gift and
but
talent.
But
do
to
it
do it
sort of-
without what's the magic with how you deliver though? Is it
it has to be funny.
okay,
So
got
you
it.
have to be I saw myself as a delightful irritant. So
Kind of like that wart.
yeah, well, or kind of like the sand in the clam that makes the
pearl.
the pearl.
There you go.
Oh my
So-
gosh.
And it was because
awesome.
because there's so much that goes on in corporate healthcare that's just beyond the realm of common sense. Like,
Right.
beyond
Yeah.
the realm of
Agreed.
common sense. From the way the business, the whole business system is set up, to the influence of big pharma, to how studies are produced. I mean, we can go on. And so we just started talking about all this stuff. We had one of the first series we did was on opioids. We went back to the history of how this started in the United States back in 1980. We interviewed some friends of ours who sadly had lost a son to an accidental overdose.
Mhm.
We interviewed Ben Westhoff, who had pretended to be a drug dealer to infiltrate Chinese drug labs to be able to write a book about it, which is just insane.
That's
but
insane.
amazing.
Talk about facing fear. Gee.
Yes.
Exactly.
No, the guy, just amazing. Then, of course, tons of COVID stuff. We have talked to Steve Torrance, who is a 4-time NHRA top fuel dragster champion. He drives a car that goes 0 to 100 in 0.8 of a second.
Dear
So-
Lord.
And
My heart
He,
just like,
he had a bunch of medical problems as a kid, which have, carried through. So how do you become the best at your sport with these
yes.
challenges? Eddie Braun, who recreated Evel Knievel's jump over the Snake River Canyon in a steam-powered rocket that they built in a garage.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
talk about fearless freedom, right?
That is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've been all over the place. We have a show that we try to do once a month called Doc Tales with Cocktails, where we
Oh,
talk about
nice.
the
I like that.
funnier.
That sounds like my kind of show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a beverage, and we literally laugh at some of the dumb things we've done, seen, um, in our careers, laugh at ourselves, and
Like,
it's pretty
like when a
funny.
patient comes in and we ask, have you had a fever? And they say,
Yes.
well, of course I have. I'm 98 and a half. And you
Oh
say, well,
dear.
that's not a fever. And they say, yeah, but I normally run 96. And I say, well, actually, it's an objective measure. It's 100.5 Fahrenheit.
Right.
It's objective. Water boils at 212. A fever is 100.5. And the guy turns to me and says, well, that's your opinion.
Nice. Well,
And
you
I'm
came to
like,
see me.
yeah,
Came
well,
to see me.
why are you paying me
And
for
how
my
do I get
advice?
to the problem solution? I have to
Yeah.
ask questions. That's
Yeah.
just how it works.
Well, that's your opinion. Okay,
That's
great.
their opinion. Oh my. Yeah, no, that is hilarious. There's definitely a
But yeah,
lot
the
of
shows
comedy in what we do.
Yeah, there is.
there is a lot of comedy in what we do because we try to keep it fun and light, especially in those episodes because we have so many of the other serious ones. But we really try to keep it to the where we cut to the through all those. We call it the BS, stands
Yeah.
for the bullshit, to
Right.
keep so that people hear the truth. And when there's blame to be had on the physician side, like in that opioid epidemic with then we place blame on ourselves on the medical community, and try to get the real facts out there instead of the common narrative. So that's how the
Yeah.
name came about.
I love it. It's great. I think that's really
Yeah.
awesome. Hey, it's Dr. G, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for listening to this episode. I'm so honored to have you here with me. Did you know that I can help you to get your own podcast started? With my podcasting launch course for professionals, I walk you through everything you need to know about starting a podcast. I'm with you every step of the way from sign up to launching your show with 5 episodes ready to go. There's a done for you version that's also available if you would just rather just do recordings and leave the behind the scenes work up to us, then that one is definitely for you. But either way, we've got your back here at Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Oh, if you already have a show and you need production services, we have monthly plans available for you. So check out the links in the episode show notes for more information. Let's get back to the show. And then, so you hinted towards, taking the podcast to another level. I don't know if you want to share any of that, or if there is something else that you all are into that you want to share with the audience.
We're going to do a couple of things. The first thing I think what we're going to do is take the Doc Tales with Cocktails as its own episode so that it'll be an
Okay.
additional episode and much lighter so that
Mhm.
people can get a really quick, half an hour. We do 3 segments, that kind of thing.
And that's video. That's more video. Well, I don't know if we'll do
That'd be
audio,
like on
but
a YouTube channel or something.
yeah,
Correct.
we're already on Rumble, so we put our podcasts. Put the video up on Rumble, so we'll probably, I don't know if there'll be like a Facebook, YouTube, but that's the plan for the
Depending on
weekly.
how controversial we
Yes.
are with that episode will determine on what platform it goes.
Exactly.
That's really,
So which platform would be controversial then? Because you could put a lot of stuff on YouTube.
yeah, well, we interviewed Peter McCullough twice. The second time we interviewed him, it lasted 12 hours, and I got a soft strike.
Oh, did you really?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
No, it's really
Okay.
interesting. So we're fairly careful with that.
Okay.
Rumble's awesome because you can do basically, I mean, as long as you're not breaking the law or you're obviously, pornographic, you can debate anything you want. So we've enjoyed that. The other thing that we really want to do, which would potentially be a YouTube channel, is we're very interested in medical history.
So yeah, we won't
Oh,
give too much away, but we'd like to combine some travel and
nice.
medical history and show the viewers sort of what's out there in medicine
Yeah.
and history and sprinkle it with a little fun flavor of us traveling in the US.
Nice.
Because
So
there's a lot of really crazy stories out there, even
yeah.
just on the mainland United States.
Oh,
Where
yes.
did
Oh,
where did
yes.
defibrillators come from? Who was the first person to do a successful C-section?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of in the United States, which there's stuff it's just wild, and a lot of this happened in these little dinky places, and you're like, what's significant about this medically?
And
Well,
what I was going to say, the thing that when we find these stories and we look back at them, because we've been docs, and I always hate saying back in the day, but I'm starting to feel that way. But when we trained actually, and I don't even think I told or mentioned it, but we grew up in Canada. I grew up in northern Canada. We trained in Canada, and then moved down here, which was another overcoming your fear story. But um, we we just think of how things we used to be able to do things with much more freedom in medicine without all the litigation and the patient. You would act, it's
Hmm.
kind of like third
Yeah.
world medicine sometimes, and you're a
Yeah.
little bit more free to um, put yourself, and unfortunately sometimes the patient risk for the greater good, if that makes sense, where you could take some chances. And that's how these in the past, like the C-sections, the defibrillators, how these things came about is because there wasn't so much restriction in medicine for physician to actually have the courage to step out and try these things. And so that's what's fascinating about those stories, which I think we find really appealing, is that someone's dying and you literally could just do everything that you could in the moment to try to save them, and something great came out of it and was invented. I mean, so that's what I like about those kind of stories that people like to hear, where there's courage and people are stepping out in faith and doing what they can. Because I think we lose a lot of that now in medicine because we're so restricted because of the restrictions
well,
from.
medicine, at least Western medicine, is not controlled by doctors. It's controlled by varying business entities, and that makes it really, really, really difficult to be super innovative from a physician side, because you're going to, by definition, innovation is partially destructive, right? I mean, you have to have creative destruction. Part of innovation, you get rid of steam engines running on wood. What's the next fuel? Coal. Well, that means you're not burning as much wood. That's good, but now you're burning coal. So I mean, that's the nature of innovation, and it goes on and on. And I think that's one of the, for our physician listeners, that's one of the biggest frustrations, is that you can't, you might see how to do something way better, but it's an act of Congress, sometimes literally an act of Congress, to be able to do that. And in simpler times, it was amazing. I mean, some of these guys, you graduate surgery, you're a surgeon. Well, what kind of surgeon are you? I don't know, whatever kind of surgeon I want to be. I'll be a brain surgeon today and I'll be a heart surgeon next week, because none of this stuff was controlled by these micro specialties. Obviously, it wasn't as good as it is now, but it's amazing how, when you see some of the stories of these individuals, how much one person can do when they were kind of left alone. Just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Wild West, right, of medicine. They had to be a cowboy. And I'm not saying that's how it should be, but there's some really fascinating stories that came out of that.
There are.
Yeah.
And now it's, you don't do anything unless it produces a billing code so somebody can get paid.
Well, the other thing is that you really don't want to practice outside of the quote unquote standard of care either, because if something goes wrong, they will
Right.
fry you. Essentially, you will be sued easily. So that is also, unfortunately, a little bit of a damper on innovation, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
most people are not comfortable, just standing out, being an outlier
Of
when it
course
comes
not.
to like care, even if it's something that they know will work, or they have all of the indicators pointing towards its success, like you still won't do it because of the fact that, like, the person can potentially have a bad outcome, and then you have nobody to defend you because they're like, oh, that
Right.
wasn't standard of care, and then that's it.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting place. It's almost like the yes, there is a lot of innovation when it comes to the previous model, but there was also a lot of abuse of patients. So that part we can't forget, because a lot of medical history was, a lot of things were developed on enslaved peoples, for
Absolutely.
example. And so that, obviously we can't, think that,
Yeah, but I would contend that hasn't
I
necessarily
would say,
changed.
yeah, exactly. If you look
well,
at
I
other parts of
agree.
the
I
world,
mean, there's
yeah.
definitely people who are incarcerated, for example, who don't really have a right,
Well,
they've,
but look what Big
but
Pharma has
yeah,
done to
well,
the entire continent of Africa.
well,
Look at
yes,
and India.
agreed.
Look at the
Yeah.
birth control trials that they did on Indian women with absolutely zero consent.
Consent, correct.
None.
No,
Zero.
I totally agree. But I'm just saying, like, as just as we're talking about, that freedom of innovation, yes, but we also have to make sure that we have things in place to protect the patient from being taken advantage of. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So that's kind
Absolutely.
of what I was saying. That yes, I absolutely agree with you. There's a very horrible medical history here in the United States, but there's a horrible medical history in a lot of parts of the world as well. And because of people who aren't able to stand up for themselves, and they do get taken advantage of for very small amounts of compensation, oftentimes not worth the trouble that they have gone through, in return. So yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing, because
Absolutely.
you wanna make new things happen, but you also don't want to hurt people in the process, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're about, sharing those things and presenting it to people and saying, okay, here's the facts. Like, this is the positive, this is the negative, this is really happening, and shed light on that too.
yeah,
No, that's
and
great. I think that's good, because most people don't know about those items, right? They don't. Like, no, most people don't. I mean, you brought something up that's happened very recently, right, Tim? And that's something that people may not even know about,
Yeah.
because it's not commonly spoken of, right?
Correct.
So
And
that's huge. I think now that would be fantastic to have that be explored, and put
yeah,
on people's radar.
yeah. Well, I mean, the United States has. I mean, not necessarily just the United States, but Western nations are really good at exporting the stuff they don't want to do here.
Yeah. Because there's no
Right. So,
FDA elsewhere, right? Or there's no, I'm not sure
right.
what the Canadian board is, but like there's none of that. There's no regulatory body.
No, that's. I mean, even when you look at military stuff, it's like we don't torture people. We just send them to the Armenians and let them get the information. We just export it, right? I mean, it's just kind of. I mean, this kind of stuff has gone on and on and on. So you say you have clean hands, but it's like, well, do you really? And I'm particularly sensitive to massive corporations and huge governments that can get away with this kind of stuff. And we did it. I mean, the Tuskegee experiment was probably the most horrific thing that in any recent memory, and that was the government that did that to people.
Yes.
right.
Simply
Yes.
because they were poor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff, and it's I would say it boggles my mind how many people aren't aware of these things.
Oh yeah.
Physicians, people in medicine,
Yeah.
and so we want to shed light on all of that, the negatives too. But history is one of those things that
Right.
Tim especially, but both of us are passionate about it, and I think people shouldn't forget. And if you can make
I
people
mean,
aware,
Yes, of course. Because
then
if
we
we
can do better.
don't
Yeah, like
know it, we are apt to repeat it.
well,
So-
Exactly.
case
exactly.
in point, Bayer, who makes aspirin, also invented heroin and sold it as a cough suppressant. And coincidentally, they were part of a German consortium that made Zyklon B, which was the deadly gas used in the gas chambers. And they still exist. So you see, you see people getting canceled for some stupid tweet they did 10 years ago. And I'm like, whoa, what about this company
What about this
that was
mega
making
thing?
Zyklon B?
This epic,
How about those guys?
situation.
It's just like, wow. But no one knows, so they don't care.
Yes. That's what do they call that? It's not Belle de France. Maybe it is Belle de France. They're just like whatever.
It's kind of like
Doesn't affect me. I'm good.
I forget what it is. It's like the stork phenomenon, literally. Head in the sand.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Ostrich.
Wrong bird.
Wrong bird.
Sorry.
It's not a stork.
Oh, it's ostrich in the sand.
Ostrich.
Oh yeah, it
Probably.
is ostrich in the sand because they do bury their heads.
Yeah, the stork brings babies, right?
Well,
yeah,
obvious.
right. If you ask my kids, they'd be like, "That's not right, Mom. Like that's not what you told me."
Oh, that stork thing. That's
Too
pretty
funny. The stork. So, that is super awesome. I'm super excited to hear when you guys release that because it sounds like it's going to be very interesting addition to the empire there.
Yes, well, that's what we're excited about. God willing, all the
The
plans
media empire.
and the cards fall into place. Then
Oh yes, of course.
hopefully that will happen.
I'm
So,
sure it will. In my mind, it's already manifested.
perfect. Then excellent.
Oh my,
I love it.
yeah, there you go. See, boom. Oh my gosh. So we are at that point in the show where it sounds like my kid is sick. I told her not to go to school. I told her not to go. She went anyway.
Well, that's where the germs live amongst kids at
exactly
school.
right. Oh my God.
Oh no.
Life is interesting always. Oh my God. All right. So we are at that point in the show where we're going to do fill in the blanks. Are you, first of all, is there anything you want to share beyond the podcast name so people can reach out to you? Is there anything else that you want to make sure the audience is aware of?
Yeah, for sure. Follow us on Instagram. We have some pretty entertaining, we think funny videos on there. And that's BSFreeMD. So it's the exact same.
You can see what we're like. We're pretty
at BSFreeMD.
transparent, and we are who we are. Exactly. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and then our podcasts are on all the major platforms. And then we have the video on Rumble, and we come out every Thursday. There you
Awesome.
go. BS free. Yep.
Love it. All right, cool. All right. So are you ready for fill in the blanks? Yes.
Sure.
Okay,
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So the first one is, if I am fearless, I will.
Go ahead. You.
Well, if I'm fearless, I will live with courage, which I think is manifesting what, the good side of fear and doing it anyways, because you believe morally. I think ultimately it's everything in that world is moral. So that morally you'll stand up for what's right. So I will live with courage.
Awesome. All right. The next one is, to me, fearless freedom means.
I'm kind of piggybacking similarly to what Tim said, but for me, fearless freedom means living a life following my moral compass, and with I won't say no regrets, but following my moral compass and standing up for what I believe. Being able to do that is fearless freedom to me.
Awesome. Love it. And the last one is, my battle cry is.
Hold my beer and watch this.
Oh, great.
That's his, which you should be able to figure out that he's a 7 on the Enneagram, because I'm into that lately. Hold my beer and watch this. And mine is more of really patience, persistence, and just fortitude. That's what life's about. Being patient gets you a long way. Persistence and fortitude. That's kind of what I follow. So
Awesome.
I think this is more fun sounding though. Hold my beer and watch this.
Listen, hey, yin and yang, right? The compliments.
Right.
Yes.
Gas and brake. We call
There
each
you
other
go.
gas and
There you
brake.
go.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, thank you too so much for taking time out and spending it with the Fearless Freedom Tribe. We really appreciate your insights and your sharing and how much you were candid today too. We really like that.
Thanks. We had a great time being here. I
Yes.
really appreciate what you're doing on your show too.
You bet. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Again, I'm Dr. G. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified of when the next episode is going to be. And also, I'll catch you next time. Have a great one. Be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.